Hello everybody, welcome back to my gaming review. Just woke up a little bit ago. I want to talk about speed in gaming and how quick, games are supposed to load nowadays. But I wanted to talk about this topic because, with the PS5 and Xbox Series S and X, they're supposed to be super duper fast consoles. They're supposed to download games faster. They are supposed to load games faster. And, technically we've had fast load times in the past with game systems. In the 7th generation, the 8th generation, it seemed like everything went a lot slower when it came to downloads and when it came to loading up games on like PS4, Xbox One, and the PS3 and Xbox 360. But if you look in the past and gaming history, you would know if you've used past systems that they were actually a lot faster. The PlayStation 2 loaded games in like a minute or two. If you have like a Nintendo 64 loads games immediately when you put the cartridge in. Nintendo Game Boy, the Atari 2600 loads games immediately. The PlayStation 1, you get the point. Back in the past, load times wasn't really a big deal. When you had a game, you would put it in your system and it would immediately load. It would sometimes take a few minutes to load, but it would not take you hours and hours for a game to load. Now, coming to the 7th generation of game systems, the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, they were both very slow consoles when it came to downloads, especially the PlayStation 3. The PlayStation 3 would take hours to download, like one game, and it would take hours and hours and hours sometimes. And, people would have to have their PlayStation 3 system. They'd have to, run it all night so they can have a game in the morning or in the noon or whatever. I've downloaded some PlayStation 3 games. They take a ridiculous amount of time to download. The PlayStation 4 is not as bad as the PlayStation 3, same with the Xbox One, but still, load times were an issue. Downloading games was an issue because it would take, some games would take 30 minutes to download, so you'd have to go do something. It seems like back in the past with the retro systems, these retro systems before the 7th generation, they would load games immediately. You would already be playing a game for like an hour or 30 minutes instead of waiting for these downloads and waiting for an update or something like that. So with the PS5 and Xbox Series generation, Sony and Microsoft have focused on speed, they focused on power, they focused on how fast you could actually get into a game, right? But the thing is that, technically with the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, as well with the PS4 and the PS4 and the Xbox One, you can technically make these systems faster using an SSD drive. Now, the reason why game systems nowadays, the reason why game systems nowadays load a lot slower than back in the old days is because they use hard drives. So with the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, they had flash memory and they also had hard drives. And, because of that, they were very slow systems. Also, in the 7th generation, it was like one of the first times both companies really relied on hard drives. And all the way to the 9th generation, hard drives have become the normal. But now, with the 9th generation, we've gotten into SSD to make our game systems faster. But if you look in the past, with game systems, you had memory cards, you had cartridges that had the memory built into them, and, you can't really say gaming in the past was slow, because, I have a whole bunch of systems that load games faster than my PS4 can, faster than my PS3 can, and you could definitely upgrade, these old systems, the 8th and 7th generation, because you can just get an SSD drive. But game systems have definitely gone slower after the 5th and 6th generation were over. When you got into the 7th generation, game systems became very slow when it came to downloads and all that. And then with the 8th generation, the original systems were very slow, and then they had like the PS4 Pro, the Xbox One X that did a little bit faster speeds, but it's kind of the same thing, you know. These consoles are very slow compared to past systems, but it's because they are hard drive based systems, and because the Xbox One is so reliant on DRM, it kind of requires you to have a lot of updates and constantly downloading stuff to Xbox One, so that it takes a long time to actually get into a game. It depends on the game, but sometimes it takes hours and hours just to get into a game. Now, coming into the 9th generation, again, Sony and Microsoft have both, used some methods to make those systems faster, such as SSD. The Xbox Series has gone back to using these little memory cards for those systems, and the PS5 has SSD, and you can also expand it. But these consoles are still not fast enough, in my opinion, because, again, when you go back to systems that never had hard drives, SSDs, in the past, game consoles had less parts built into them. And the reason why systems became a lot slower was because, these companies started to shove all these different parts in it. They started to increase the graphics, obviously, because with every new game system, graphics get better. They started to focus a lot more on storage capacity. And that's why game systems became slow to begin with, is because we started to go to the direction of SSD and hard drives. And sometimes I prefer old systems, if I'm being completely honest, because, when I play my PlayStation 1, it immediately loads a game. When I play PS2, I'm in a game within 1 minute of it reading the disc. Same goes for my N64, my Super Famicom, my Sega Genesis. They just load games like almost immediately. There's no really a time limit, and there's no downloads or anything else, because these are game systems that don't really have Wi-Fi connection or anything else, so they're like super fast. I don't really mind the slowness in gaming. I'm gonna keep my PlayStation 4. I'm not gonna buy a PS5 because, again, I think the 9th generation is kind of useless to me. Because I'm pretty happy with the PlayStation 4. I've played PS4 for years. I don't really see any reason to buy a PS5. If I want faster speeds, I'll go with an SSD drive. But, I just want to make a video on how gaming became, slow, basically. We got slow loading time. And then we were kind of back on the focus of speed, which is very interesting because, consoles used to load games immediately. Then in the 7th generation to the 8th generation, it was kind of slow to get into games. And now Microsoft and Sony are focused on speed. But it was always there in the past. We just decided to... The reason why speed has gone down when it comes to loading games is, again, because these companies now, they put all these components and all these parts in their system and the hard drives and all that, and it makes it drastically slower than like a PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2, an original Xbox, you know what I mean? Because consoles used to load games almost immediately after turning it on. You wouldn't be waiting 30 minutes for a game to load. You wouldn't be waiting for hours on end. And the other thing nowadays is that games are really, really big nowadays when it comes to capacity. Games are like, 90 gigabytes. Some games are like 1 terabyte. So that also makes the speed go down because games are a lot... video games nowadays are a lot more storage about them. The Atari was literally kilobytes. When you go to the PS2 generation, the PlayStation 1 generation of game systems, the 3D games that came out, they were very, they didn't have as much storage in them as these newer systems. I mean, on the PS2 and PS1, you had these little memory cards that had like 8 megabytes, or 8 megabytes, 10 megabytes. So the reason why the speed has drastically, changed with the 7th and 8th generation. The reason why fast load times has decreased since the past is because, for obvious reasons, these new game systems are more Wi-Fi reliant. They have to download updates. They have to, they have to read the game. They gotta get it onto the hard drive or the SSD drive. And even with SSDs, consoles still go slow nowadays. They don't go as fast as, obviously, the past systems as I listed. But anyway, I'm ending the video. I just want to talk about game systems with like the speed and pretty much why game systems have decreased when it comes to loading games or downloads, and why the big focus now is with PS5 and Xbox Series. They can go fast now, even though consoles really always went fast until 7th and 8th generation happened. But anyway, I'm gonna end the video. Hope everyone liked the video. Tell me in the comments below what you think about how slow 7th and 8th generation could be, or if you've experienced these downloads that takes hours and hours on end just to get to a game, where you update in your system and you just want to play a game and you can't. But anyway, I'm gonna end the video, so I hope everyone enjoys. This has been my gaming review, and peace out.